Okay, welcome everyone for joining us today on the Editor is in podcast. My name is Anthony James, and I'm the editor-in-chief of Marriage and Family Review and your host for this podcast. And we want to welcome you to the launch of a new segment, MFR in 5, which is to promote the work of scholars in the field of family science and what they publish in MFR. And so to introduce herself, let me pass the virtual mic to my guest.
Excellent. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Dr. Renee Bourdeaux, and I would be what I research positive interpersonal communication. So I like to look at relationships in the way that we do them well and how they help build connection towards each other. I teach at Northwest University in the Seattle area, and all of the classes that I love to teach and research have to do with relationships.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Yes, no problem. Thanks for joining us. And so for this particular segment, we asked 3 questions and allowed the scholars to answer those about their recently published work. And so the 3 questions are, what was the study? In what area of literature does the study fit in? And what should readers have answered after reading this article?
Excellent. So I'll just start with one of the things that I always ask questions because I'm a positive relational scholar is how do we insert things into relationships that create good outcomes? And so for this particular study, we had couples answer the question, when you have conversations about finances, when you're talking about money, what are the things that you are specifically doing, the strategies that you are specifically enacting, saying that lead to what you would deem happy outcomes or positive outcomes. And through that, we were able to discern some really kind of key fascinating things. We had 53 total people complete this, and it was a qualitative study. So we were looking at narratives of what they were telling us, stories about how the conversations were unfolding. And from that, we were able to discern some particular characteristics. So what are some of the key takeaways or some of the things that you would get from the study? We learned that couples, when they're talking about finances, they need to be able to set some rules or boundaries. And this interestingly tied to the part of literature which looks at relational maintenance. Relational maintenance is a theory in the field of communication studies. And that helps us see there are 7 tactics that you might use in your relationships to keep them strong. And so from these particular tactics that I drew out of this study qualitatively, I used Spradley's taxonomic coding. And then the researcher that I worked with, Maggie Bright, her and I were able to figure out where does the strategy fit into the relational maintenance theory. So what we learned was the understanding was the relational maintenance theory that we saw come about the most. So Stafford and Canary in the relational maintenance theory have understanding, which is really just asking questions, making sure you're able to put yourself in the other person's shoes. And we found that 2 of our strategies from this study fit really well in there. That was setting rules and goals, so you both had clear outcomes for what was going on, and navigating differences. That wasn't about using conflict resolution strategies. It was simply saying, this doesn't seem to be going quite so well. What do I need to do to really draw out the other person and to learn more about it? And both people like committing to navigating those differences, like not seeing the conflict and saying we're not going to do anything about it. It's seeing the conflict and saying, I want to solve this and find a way to tackle it. So above and beyond, establishing rules and goals was the number one thing that you should take away from this. So if you're like, what's the one thing take away from the study? If I'm going to go talk about finances with somebody, set rules and goals, understand when you're going to talk about it, what you're going to accomplish, who's going to do what in the conversation, and it should lead to a much better outcome for talking about finances.
Wonderful. I am biased, but that sounds like wonderful content. So I am glad that it is published in Marriage and Family Review. And thank you so much for being willing to share that snippet of your research. Of course, we will share Dr. Bourdeaux's research on the website and a link to the study so that people can read more about it. And hopefully that we can continue to publish your work here. And just want to thank you so much again for joining us today. So thank you for being here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for publishing such great research and for providing this tool to help people learn even more about marriages and families.
Absolutely. And to everyone joining us, thank you for listening in and check out Dr. Bourdeaux's research. So thanks for joining us and have a wonderful day.